Hello everybody. Yes, same spot, totally different weather. And also, it's not a morning walk. It's already in the afternoon because this morning we had a really bad thunderstorm. Quite some water, lots of noise, and something else. Sand from the Sahara. Can you believe it? Yep, Sahara sand all over my car. That's not fog, that's not humidity, that's not smog. It's all sand coming from Africa. And today I want to follow up on what I touched briefly in my last video when I talked about how I got into power plane flying and how that was different with respect to planning a flight, to go about a flight, to glider flying. Well, it's not only the flight, it's the flying itself that's a little bit different. The mental state, for example. Hey, I'm Wolf. I'm a retired physicist and a glider and tailwheel pilot. So, what do I mean when I say there's a different mental state to it? Well, take the landing, for example. The very first landing I ever flew was an engine off landing. Of course, because it was in a glider. Standard operating procedure, nothing frightening, nothing dangerous. Now, the same happened when I had to practice engine off landings in the Tomahawk that we used as a primary trainer. Adjust the side picture, adjust to a slightly different glide angle, slightly different glide angle, and the rest is a normal glider landing. Now, as soon as I put on my power pilot shoes, it looks totally different. Emergency, it cries, emergency. No go around possible. Don't come too short. Don't float too long. It's an emergency after all. See what I mean? Well, something similar is also true for spot landings. In my power plane flying, the mantra is every landing is a spot landing. But there's a difference because if it's a long runway and you don't hit the spot, there's no consequence. You just, land a little bit longer, you have an engine, you taxi back, and that's all there is. In gliders, when I learned to fly, it was different in the sense that if I floated down the runway and put her down at the other end, I had to listen to all the curses and bad raps from my fellow glider student pilots when they came down to help me push the glider back to the launch pad. Different story. Also, let's talk a little bit about controls. Same controls in a glider if you just forget about the engine controls for a moment. Slightly different use, and by that I mean rudder and aileron are used a little bit differently, although the goal is the same. Coordinated flight. If it's totally ignored, it can become a safety issue, no matter whether you are flying in a glider or in a power plane. However, in a glider, coordinated flight means performance. If I don't align the nose of the glider perfectly well with the direction I'm intending to go to, I will incur extra drag. I will have a higher sink rate and I lose in glide range. So it makes a big difference. Fortunately, in a glider, we have the best instrument to indicate coordinated flight, which is the yaw string, totally unperturbed by propeller slipstream. Interestingly enough, I have much more difficulty in a power plane to fly coordinated than in a glider. It's maybe got to do with that I'm more of a visual person, so I react instantaneously if I see something which is wrong, rather than feeling what is wrong. This kind of seat of the pants feeling in a power plane to stay coordinated without looking at the turn and bank is a little bit more difficult to me. And then there's the weather. For a VFR flight, a power pilot has to make sure that all the typical weather parameters, cloud base, wind, visibility, fall within the personal limits. For a glider pilot, weather is energy, so he has to put a lot more attention to detail before he takes off, but even more so during the flight. He has to be on top all the time of the weather to interpret what's going on and to see how that might affect what's going to happen soon. Nowcasting in its purest form. And there might be situations that pop up unexpectedly that you really cannot control. You cannot be proactive about it. You only can react. And that control issue also applies to landings. In a glider, there comes a point when you're 100% committed to land whatever's in front of you, whether it's your home runway or the patch where you outland on a cross-country flight. No second chance, no go around. You have to land now. And whatever comes after that point is something you can only react to. That's not what you have planned. You couldn't. So now it's time to react. In a power plane, you have the engine. So you can control much more of your landing. You have a better control over the glide angle. You can decide to go around, try for a second time. So that's different. And I'm feeling that I'm letting too much of this glider attitude of now you have to react rather than proact, have that too much influence on my power flying. In other words, I'm not using the engine enough to control what I can control. So that's a takeaway from the difference between glider flying and power flying. For me, take more control. All right, so we'll see how that goes in my next power flights. I hope I can remember. And I hope you can remember to come and watch my next videos. See you then.